Two people finish the exact same workout, sprints, leg day, doesn't matter which. One can barely walk for a week, whilst the other is barely sore. Here's the part that doesn't add up though. Soreness alone won't tell you which one actually built more muscle. But luckily for us, understanding the process behind muscle growth will. So today I'll be explaining the science behind muscle growth and how we can incorporate this knowledge in our everyday lives. So welcome to the REM Hop, where we talk anything science, fitness, or neuro. Okay, so the best way to go about things is if we think of this process as if it was a life cycle. First, what a muscle fiber actually is. Next, how it gets torn down. Then, how your body rebuilds it into something stronger than it was before. And then finally, the handful of things that actually decide how much of that rebuild you get to keep and grow upon. Part 1. The anatomy of a muscle. So the best way to understand the anatomy of a muscle is by flipping our perspective on it. We need to stop seeing it as merely a muscle and almost look at it as if it was a machine. Each fiber in our muscle is packed with myofibrils, and each myofibril is just a repeating chain of a structure called a sarcomere. In said sarcomere, every contraction we've ever done came down to these two partner proteins inside of it, which are actin and myosin. They basically pull down on each other as if you were pulling down on a rope. But the key is, if you stack enough of these proteins whilst they pull down together and get them along the whole muscle fiber, it can be strong enough to move even a barbell. And boom, that's how we lift weights or any heavy object. Another key thing that most people haven't really heard about are satellite cells. These are on the outside of our muscle fibers, and right now it's basically dormant in this part of the cycle, but I want y'all to keep it in the back of your mind because it's about to become one of the most important aspects of this video. Now, finally, to wrap up the anatomy of our muscles, I want to bring up type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. Type 1 fibers are built for endurance and they're harder to fatigue, whilst our type 2 fibers are built for power. They're super strong, but they tire out pretty fast. Now, knowing which one our body leans more towards depends on our genetics and how we train. So we'll come back on that later because it changes way more than people think. Now let's talk about the breakdown portion of this cycle. This is the part most people already have a general idea of. You lift or do any physical activity with your muscle and it gets damaged. Metabolic stress also adds to this, and that's that burning sensation you feel towards the end of a set. During that workout and for a while after, your body's actually breaking down more muscle protein than it's building. So you're technically in a net catabolism. Mid-workout, you're losing more ground than you can actually make. So with that in mind, it kind of raises the question, when does muscle actually grow? Remember that satellite cell that I said was super important? Here's it in action. The damage signal from working out is what wakes up the dormant satellite cell, and it activates, multiplies, and fuses directly into the damaged fibers. And when it fuses, it donates its own nucleus to the fiber. Overall, this is a good thing because more nuclei means more capacity to build protein, and that means you're building a bigger muscle fiber. At the same time, a pathway called mTOR begins to ramp up, and protein synthesis rises for the first time in the cycle since we started training. So what are the biggest impacts to this fiber replenishment? It's two simple but key things: sleep and protein. Sleep being key is truly an understatement though. In our deep sleep, our growth hormone spikes the hardest, and this allows our physical growth to really blossom. Hand in hand with this though, if we're underfilled with our protein, then it gives our body all sorts of problems replenishing said fibers, and then we start having issues beyond just muscle. How long this protein pathway stays up is debated. Estimates of this window run from around a day to a couple of days, and this all depends on the training intensity and activity. So now that we know about the windows our fibers have for upgrading themselves, what's the best way to make the most of this replenishment? Let's talk about the optimization of this cycle. 3 things matter more than anything else here. First is progressive overload. We have to give the muscle a reason to adapt again instead of repeating the exact stimulus it's already adapted to. Next is the frequency of how we attack certain muscles. Instead of hitting a muscle group and then waiting a full week to hit it again, instead we should give our fibers roughly 48 to 72 hours to recover, and then we get back at it. This is more than enough time for our body to do its job recovery-wise, but this is only if we're properly giving our body enough protein and sleep in this recovery window, as we mentioned before. Last but certainly not least, and what I think is the most important, is how we handle the recovery aspect of this cycle. We have to be eating protein throughout the day and make sure that our sleep is actually long enough for that window to do its job. So this is different from just having a protein shake and going off of 4 hours of sleep. It's making the constant effort to be fueled and rested in between training sessions. That being said, we have to keep in mind training is a stimulus, whereas sleep and recovery is where your body actually decides what to do with the stimulus. Skip the stimulus and there's nothing to repair. Skip the recovery and the repair never finishes. Now, to bring back the two muscle fibers I talked about from the beginning of the video, a cool aspect about them is that depending on the physical activity you do, you can actively change the fibers. Train for endurance long enough, you start developing more type 1 muscle fibers. If you train for power and explosiveness paired with lower reps, then you can start shifting the balance towards a type 2 muscle fiber. So, the way we train can actually alter our fibers if we're consistent enough, which I think is pretty cool. And yep, that's the full cycle. Please, if there was anything I missed or anything you just want to discuss, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely reply. Now, please, if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, please subscribe for more content, and I hope everyone has a blessed day or night, wherever you are. Have a good one. Thank you.